Hello, this is Dr. Professor Waldo Skyhippo, and welcome to Ebertology. Today, I will sit down with Professor Guillermo Waterelephant and discuss the effects of something we all do. And if you say you don't, well then you're doing it right there. Lying. Specifically, deception and its effects on both the internal and external levels. Professor Waterelephant, over to you.
Yes, lying. The way making a false statement with deliberate intent to deceive. People assume we only lie to others. However, this is not always the case. We internally lie to ourselves and have the capability to mix up our lies with actual memories. We often are confusing reality with fantasy in this case and do not even know it. I wanted to test how accurate this concept of convincing yourself a lie was the truth, and my results were astonishing. I selected 45 college students and had them recall an event before the age of 10. My fellow researchers and I manipulated half the details in the story and kept the other half accurate details and distributed the details among 4 different lies. Lie 1 was a lie that would be prepared and told by the participant. Lie 2 was not prepared for, but told. Lie 3 was prepared, but not told. Lie 4 was the control variable since participants did not prepare and were not told. Students measured the different lies on a scale from 1, experience that did not happen, to an 8, definitely did happen, and any increase in the scale would show that the lies were becoming more real. We measured their initial scales, which consisted of 1s to 3s. Participants were given time to prepare for the next stage of the study, which was to convince the interviewer, with the best of their capability, that the one of the lies they were given was 100% real. They prepared by answering questions on paper such as, "Where were you? Who were you with?" In the next stage, there was an oral interview between the participant and the interviewer. The participant was asked the same questions that they prepared previously during the planning stage. 2 weeks later, participants returned, and there was a minimum increase of a 2.21 score on the scale for those who prepared for the lie and told it to the interviewer. Telling lies, planned or not, resulted in the highest change scores. This leads to the implication that an internal belief in a lie will lead to the spreading of that lie externally.
I also looked at people's tendency to lie to themselves. However, my research has been focused around the people that consciously or subconsciously implement self-deception more than anyone else. The terminally ill. Almost all patients suffering from a severe and life-threatening disease ask their doctor to explain to them the exact prognosis of their illness. However, this does not mean that once they hear it, they will necessarily believe it. In one study I completed, we looked at 1,193 different patients with either metastatic lung cancer or colorectal cancer who were alive 4 months after receiving chemotherapy for stage 4 cancer, for which their odds of survival were very low. We surveyed whether or not they believed that chemotherapy could, in fact, cure their cancer. Out of those with lung cancer, 69% falsely believed that chemo would be able to get rid of their cancer. And an astounding 81% of people with colorectal cancer believed the same. We accounted for the possibility that these high numbers could simply be due to miscommunication between physicians and their patients, and found that those who rated the communication with their doctors favorably were the same ones who held the false belief that their cancer was curable. And those who understood that their disease was likely going to kill them rated their communication with their doctor very poorly. The level of education for the patient, their functional status, and their role in the decision-making was proven not to be associated with their beliefs about chemo. Each of the physicians fully understood the magnitude and severity of their diseases and expressed that they attempted to help their patients understand this as well. The patients who understand their prognosis accurately were discontent with their physicians, which points to the idea that patients of terminally ill diseases are subconsciously implementing what are called biased information search strategies, such as seeking out physicians who are more optimistic about their chances of survival, convincing themselves that chemo will cure their disease, or misremembering facts and beliefs that their doctor never even expressed. In other words, these people are deceiving themselves and going into denial, perhaps as a self-defense mechanism, or simply an inability to realize their own mortality.
So does this mean that patients are more comfortable if they believe in a high chance of survival, even if that may not be the case?
Well, yes, I believe it does, which prevents some ethical issues in terms of doctors fully explaining a patient's actual prognosis. While a patient has a right to understand what they're looking at in terms of life expectancy, as stated in your work, false internal beliefs will inevitably, albeit subconsciously, lead to external lies. And this may do serious damage to family members and other loved ones who the patient may lead to believe their chances of survival are much higher than they actually are. Based on your research, however, it is proven that telling the truth and lying often take the same mental capacity. So what really is the driving force behind lying as opposed to being honest?
Well, liars are not working much harder than truth tellers because liars use a strategy where they recycle true stories. They take their experiences and manipulate them to fit their current situation. This method uses much less mental effort, and usually the lies told this way are much more plausible. Lies are typically used as defense mechanism for someone to live up to standards set by themselves or others. The people you tell the lie to do not know the true story, which gives the liar a sense of security. Further on this subject, what do you believe are the driving forces behind the self-deception in your study? Is it the optimism of the people that gets them through the illness, or just the small chance that they actually do survive their illness?
People overestimate their chances of survival because it's the only way they'll be able to function with the knowledge that they're going to die. It is a sense of cognitive dissonance between the knowledge that they are going to pass and the inability to fully realize their own mortality. The belief that they are not actually going to die is what eases their troubled minds during this process, and brings on the sense of security that will allow them to live the rest of their lives void of utter despair. The cognitive dissonance and self-deception snowballs into actual beliefs. That seems to relate to your study. How does lying end up affecting one's confidence in telling the truth?
Well, the results from my study show that people seem to give up, in a sense, of following the truth. They seem to believe that the truth suddenly becomes less real as they fall deeper into the lie. This is why some say lying has a snowball effect. We can invest so much into a lie that it is easier to continue with the lie than to rely back on the truth.
Well, thank you for meeting with me today, and good luck with your further research on this subject. And thanks to all the listeners for tuning into this week's episode of Ebertology. This has been Dr. Professor Waldo Skyhippo, along with Professor Guillermo Water Elephant. Tune in next week when I sit down with Dwayne The Rock Johnson and discuss the psychological effects of nuclear capabilities on our world leaders.